538 million years ago, the rules changed. For 3 billion years, life on Earth had been patient, microscopic, invisible, single cells and simple colonies drifting through ancient oceans, consuming and dividing and consuming again, leaving almost no mark on the fossil record that geologists would one day read. The Earth had been a microbial world, a world of films and mats and chemical gradients, a world of extraordinary biological sophistication at the cellular level and almost complete simplicity at every scale above it. And then, in a span of geological time so brief it barely registers against the immensity that preceded it, everything changed. The Cambrian Explosion, the most dramatic and consequential biological event in the history of complex life. A period spanning perhaps 20 million years, a blink in geological terms, a revolution in biological ones, during which almost every major animal body plan that has ever existed on Earth made its first appearance in the fossil record. Simultaneously, suddenly, without obvious precedent in the rocks below. The word explosion is not metaphor. It is the most precise description available for what the geological record shows. Below the base of the Cambrian, the rocks contain almost nothing recognizable as animal life. Above it, the record bursts with eyes and legs and shells and jaws and fins and guts and nervous systems. In 20 million years, biology invented the architectural vocabulary of every animal that would ever live. To understand why this happened, you must first understand what the world looked like immediately before it. The Ediacaran period had produced its own strange biological experiments. Dickinsonia and Charnia and the soft-bodied organisms of the Precambrian seafloor had demonstrated that multicellular complexity was possible. But the Ediacaran organisms were passive, flat, largely immobile, feeding by absorbing nutrients across body surfaces in direct contact with the microbial mat. They were the first draft of complex life, exploratory, diverse, ultimately unsuccessful. Most of them had no descendants in the post-Cambrian world. Something ended the Ediacaran biological experiment, and something triggered what followed. Both questions remain among the most debated in all of paleontology. The most widely accepted explanation for the Cambrian explosion involves a convergence of factors, a perfect storm of environmental, ecological, and evolutionary conditions that made the biological revolution not merely possible, but, in some sense, inevitable. The oxygen story begins here, as it so often does in the Proterozoic and early Phanerozoic. The Great Oxidation event had established oxygen in the atmosphere 2 billion years before the Cambrian. But atmospheric oxygen and deep ocean oxygen are different things. Throughout much of the Proterozoic, the deep ocean remained anoxic. Hydrogen sulfide dominated the deep water. And the energy cost of building complex animal body plans, the collagen and muscle tissue and nervous systems that animals require, is extraordinarily high. It cannot be sustained on the energy budget that anaerobic metabolism provides. By the early Cambrian, deep ocean oxygen levels had risen sufficiently to cross a threshold. Not fully oxygenated, but enough. Enough to make the biological energy budget of complex animal construction viable in the open ocean rather than only in shallow, well-oxygenated coastal zones. The door to the deep ocean opened, and life walked through it. But oxygen alone does not explain the specifics. It does not explain the timing. It does not explain the simultaneity. For that, you need ecology. The Cambrian explosion was not merely a biological event. It was the invention of ecology itself. Before the Cambrian, there were no predators in the modern sense. There were organisms that consumed microbial mats. There were filter feeders drawing nutrients from the water column. But nothing that actively pursued another animal, detected it at a distance, chased it, and consumed it. No eyes to see, no legs to chase, no shells to hide inside. And then Anomalocaris arrived. Anomalocaris, the anomalous shrimp, was the apex predator of the early Cambrian Ocean, up to a meter in length. Eyes compound and enormous, among the most sophisticated optical systems ever evolved. Flexible frontal appendages tipped with spiny, grasping structures. A circular jaw of overlapping plates capable of crushing the shells of the organisms it pursued. Swimming through the Cambrian Ocean with sinuous, undulating body flaps, it was the most powerful animal that had yet existed on Earth. And its existence changed everything. The moment the first active predator appeared, the selective pressure on every other organism in the ocean shifted fundamentally. Prey that could not detect a predator died. Prey that could not move fast enough to escape died. Prey that offered no physical barrier to a predator's assault died. The survivors were the ones with eyes to see danger approaching, the ones with legs to flee, the ones with shells to resist being eaten. The predator invented the prey, and the prey reinvented the predator. In the evolutionary arms race that the Cambrian explosion triggered and sustained, each adaptation on one side of the equation demanded a counter-adaptation on the other. Eyes demanded camouflage. Speed demanded armor. Armor demanded stronger jaws. Stronger jaws demanded thicker shells. The race accelerated across millions of years of increasingly complex biological invention, and has not stopped. It continues today in every predator-prey relationship on Earth. Every chase, every escape, every shell, every fang traces its evolutionary logic directly to the Cambrian. The fossil record of the Cambrian explosion is preserved in extraordinary detail in a small number of sites around the world where fine-grained sediment burial preserved soft tissues that would otherwise have disappeared without trace. The Burgess Shale of British Columbia, Canada. Discovered in 1909 by paleontologist Charles Walcott on a high mountain ridge in what is now Yoho National Park. The sediments that preserve these organisms were originally deposited at the base of an ancient reef escarpment, where sudden sediment avalanches periodically buried entire communities of Cambrian animals so rapidly that even their soft tissues were preserved. What Walcott found, and what researchers have continued to find and describe for more than a century since, is a window into the Cambrian Ocean of extraordinary clarity. Opabinia, 5 eyes, a flexible frontal proboscis tipped with a grasping claw, swimming through the Cambrian water column in a body plan so unusual that when it was first described at a scientific meeting in 1972, the assembled paleontologists reportedly burst out laughing. Nothing like it had been seen before. Nothing like it exists today. It was an evolutionary experiment, a body plan explored during the Cambrian's creative frenzy, and then abandoned, leaving no descendants, preserved only in mountain rock 500 million years later. Hallucigenia, named for its hallucinatory strangeness. Originally reconstructed upside down and back to front, with the spines that run along its back initially misidentified as legs, and the true legs misidentified as tentacles on its back. A small worm-like organism with 2 rows of stiff defensive spines on its dorsal surface and 7 pairs of soft legs below, it scavenged along the Cambrian seafloor in extraordinary numbers. Its affinities, debated for decades, are now understood to be with the velvet worms, the Onychophorans, making it a distant cousin of a group of organisms still alive in the forests of the modern world. Wiwaxia, a small oval organism covered in overlapping sclerites of mineralized organic material and armed with defensive spines projecting upward from its back. Not quite a mollusk, not quite an annelid. Something between or beyond, another of the Cambrian's fearless biological explorations that left no clear descendants. Picaia gracilans, small, leaf-shaped, swimming with lateral undulations through the Cambrian water column. Preserved in the Burgess Shale in thousands of specimens. And important beyond its size and modest appearance, because running along the length of its body was a notochord, the structural precursor of the vertebral column. Picaia, or something very much like it, may be among the earliest known representatives of the chordate lineage, the group that would eventually produce fish, and amphibians, and reptiles, and mammals, and us. The Chengjiang fossil site of Yunnan Province, China. Older than the Burgess Shale by approximately 15 million years, placing it closer to the Cambrian's explosive beginning. Discovered in 1984 and now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, it preserves an even earlier snapshot of the Cambrian Ocean. Yunanozoan, Milocunmingia, and the remarkable Fuxianhuia, organisms that begin to show the first traces of what would become vertebrate organization. The Cambrian of China tells the beginning of the story that the Burgess Shale of Canada tells the middle of. What these fossil sites together reveal is not a single event, but a process. The Cambrian explosion did not happen in a single moment. It unfolded across approximately 20 million years of accelerating biological invention, with different groups originating at different times, different ecosystems assembling at different rates, different experiments succeeding or failing in different ocean environments across the planet. But the overall pattern is unmistakable. In the Cambrian, biology crossed a threshold. The passive, diffuse, mat-dominated ecology of the Proterozoic ocean gave way to the structured, predator-prey, ecologically stratified ocean that has characterized Earth ever since. The seafloor was transformed. Before the Cambrian, sediment surfaces were smooth and mat-covered. After the Cambrian, they were plowed and burrowed and aerated by billions of animals moving through them. The sediment itself was biologically restructured. The chemistry of the ocean was altered. The atmosphere felt the consequences as oxygen consumption by animal metabolism changed the balance of gases in ways that would echo forward through geological time. The Cambrian explosion also left its mark in stone in a way that shapes the economic world of the modern day. The animals that evolved shells and mineralized skeletons in the Cambrian began the great biological project of removing carbon from the atmosphere as calcium carbonate and burying it in seafloor sediment. The limestone and chalk and carbonate rock that form much of the geological record of the past 500 million years is, in large part, the accumulated skeletal remains of animals whose body plan architecture was first established in the Cambrian. We build with Cambrian chemistry. We write on it. We grow crops in soil derived from it. The shells of the Cambrian Ocean are in the concrete of every building and the chalk on every blackboard. The deepest question the Cambrian explosion raises, the one that has occupied paleontologists and evolutionary biologists for more than a century, is whether the explosion was truly sudden or merely appears sudden due to the imperfection of the fossil record. The Cambrian preservation bias hypothesis argues that complex animal life existed well before the Cambrian, but that soft-bodied organisms without mineralized skeletons simply left no fossil record. The explosion, on this view, was not a biological revolution but a preservational one, the moment when animals began building shells and skeletons that fossilize readily. The counter-argument is that molecular clock data, when calibrated against the fossil record, consistently places the origin of most major animal groups within or very close to the Cambrian itself. The explosion, on this view, was real. The animals were not hiding in the Precambrian record. They genuinely originated, diversified, and established their body plans in the 20 million years of the Cambrian fuse. The truth, as it so often does in deep time science, likely lies between these positions and beyond them simultaneously. The Cambrian explosion was probably both real and apparent. Some lineages certainly had deeper Precambrian roots. Others genuinely originated in the Cambrian's creative window. The combination of genuine evolutionary innovation and improved preservation potential created the pattern we read in the rock today. What cannot be disputed is the result. Every animal alive today, every insect and fish and bird and mammal and mollusk and crustacean and worm belongs to a phylum whose basic body plan architecture was established in the Cambrian or as close Cambrian relatives. The diversity of the modern animal world, extraordinary as it is built from a set of architectural blueprints that were drawn up in 20 million years of biological invention 500 million years ago. Evolution has filled in the detail with extraordinary richness across 500 million years of subsequent history. But the fundamental structural decisions, bilateral symmetry, cephalization, segmentation, the basic organization of nervous systems and digestive tracts and circulatory systems were made in the Cambrian. The Cambrian explosion is the origin event of the animal world. It is the moment at which the biological universe we inhabit was, in its deepest architectural sense, created. Every predator and every prey, every eye and every shell, every nervous system and every skeleton, every relationship between organisms that has structured every ecosystem on Earth for the past 500 million years. It all began in 20 million years of ancient ocean, in the soft sediment of a world that looked nothing like ours and contained the blueprint for everything in it. The explosion that built the living world happened once, and we are still living inside it.